Okay. Good evening, councillors, members of the public. Before we commence the meeting, can I just draw your attention to the instructions on fire alarms? There is no practice fire alarm tonight, so if the bell goes, it's for real. We assemble over the road in the Waitrose car park under the canopy. Can I ask also that we all switch our phones to silent or off? And just a matter of comment. As a committee, we understand matters under consideration tonight are sometimes emotive. I would ask you to please respect those around you in the public gallery and the committee and refrain from any booing, cheering or any other form of disturbance. So let's move on to the main business. Item number 1. The minutes of the meeting took place on 3rd of February have been laid on the table for 30 minutes. Are you content I signed these as a true record? Emma, apologies for absence, please.
Thank you. We have apologies from councillors Jim Edwards, Christian Hess and Stephen Mulliner. Thank you.
Thank you. Declarations of interest.
None before the meeting.
Thank you very much. Libby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to say that I am also a member of the Haslemere Town Council Planning and Highways Committee.
Likewise, Mr. Chairman.
Ditto. Ditto. Thank you very much indeed for that, members. Question from members of the public, Emma. Have there been any?
None received.
Thank you. And relevant updates to government guidance legislation. Peter.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, just two matters to update you on. The first one is in relation to custom build and the self-build housing register regulations, which came into force this year, and that requires the council to hold a self-build and custom housing build register, and to have regard to this register in meeting their housing in the council in meeting the housing requirement. The council already holds a register of this sort, so it's already complying with that requirement. But just to ensure that we are meeting what the new regulation says. So, on the basis of what comes out of that, the council is required to take account of this in considering any schemes that put forward self-build or custom build in meeting its need. Whilst no scheme tonight is to be proposed as custom or self-build, any future applications of such development must take this into account. The second point to add is there's some permitted development changes. In May 2013, there was a number of temporary permitted development rights introduced, which allowed a number of developments to take place without the need for planning permission, and which have now been made permanent as way of an update to the consolidated 2015 General Permitted Development Order. And those 2 points are the conversion of an office to a residential use. This temporary allowance has now been made permanent as of the 6th of April this year. Subject to a new condition allowing local planning authorities to consider impacts of noise from commercial premises on intended occupiers of development, in addition to the existing conditions apply, and that the development will take place within 3 years of the prior approval process. The second matter that's been made permanent is the conversion of a laundrette to a residential unit. That's subject to a prior approval process that will allow councils to assess the impact of changes on adequate provision of such services. Further amendments have also been tabled, and they're proposed to come into force next year regarding conversion of light industrial units to residential dwellings. However, this is due in late 2017. Therefore, when we get nearer that time, we'll provide you with an appropriate update regarding conditions that will be provided on that basis. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Peter. And members, can I just point out to the gentleman sitting on Peter's right-hand side, should we require any legal advice, Barry Devlin will be the man to do that. Thank you for that. Right, moving on then. Members...
Chairman, could I interrupt you for a moment, please? I'm sorry. We have other officers around the table that we don't know who they are. It would be nice if we were allowed to have them introduce themselves to us. Don't know who Peter is, for starters.
Okay. Peter, please.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Yes, my name is Peter Cleveland. I've recently been appointed to the Interim Development Control Manager following Elizabeth Sims' appointment to the Head of Planning role. So I'll be in that role as an interim post.
Louise?
I'm Louise Yandell. I'm the Area Team Leader for the Southern and Western team.
Gemma?
I'm Gemma Patterson. I'm the Principal Planning Officer for the Southern and Western team.
Rebecca?
I'm Rachel Kellis. I'm the Senior Planning Officer in Southern and Western.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And members, a reminder about site inspections. Following receipt of agendas, members may propose a site visit for any application on the agenda. We had one yesterday. In future, the start time for any site visit is 10 o'clock in the morning, but I would ask that members do look at the choice that's available to them. Please put in the request. It saves officer time. We were already out on one visit yesterday, and if another one was required, it would have been useful then. If there are any site inspections as a result of consideration of the application at this meeting, they'll be held on the 10th of May at 10 o'clock, or if Western have also got a meeting, it will be after 10. Right, let's move on then, please, to applications. And none of them are open to public speaking tonight, but B1 is Trimmers Field, Wood Road, Hindhead. And that's Louise, I think, isn't it, to introduce? Gemma, beg your pardon. Turn the page, got it right.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The site lies to the south of Woods Road and is occupied currently by a two-storey detached dwelling known as Trimmers Field and its associated outbuildings. Planning permission is sought for the demolition of the existing outbuildings associated with Trimmers Field and the erection of two No. 5 bedroom dwellings. The site would be accessed from Wood Road, by the way of an existing driveway that currently serves both Trimmers Field and the neighbouring property Field Gate. There's quite a bit of planning history on the site, which demonstrates that in November 2015, planning permission has been granted for the erection of two dwellings. Members will note that Plot 2 granted under this previous permission is in a similar siting to the dwelling sought at Plot 2 under this current application. The planning history also demonstrates that planning permission for 5 dwellings was refused on site in July 2015 for reasons relating to overdevelopment, failure to provide a suitable housing mix, and amenity impacts. Moving back to this current application, Plot 1 would be sited to the northwest of the site. Members will note that the Plot 2 would be sited to the northwest of the site, and Plot 1 would be sited to the southeast of the site, Members will also note that the dwelling indicated on the block plan within the blue line, just shown here, has been granted planning permission in November 2016, and although this permission has not been implemented, it does remain extant. The building at Plot 1 would be 2-storey in scale and would have an overall height of 7.7 metres, and it incorporates a mixture of a hipped gable and inverted roof designs. A private amenity area would be provided at the rear, and it would measure a depth of 23 metres to the boundary. The building at Plot 2 would also be 2-storey in scale, with an overall height of 7.7 metres, and this would incorporate a detached garage. A private amenity area would also be provided to the rear of the site, and that would measure a depth of 2.1 metres. Just moving to the proposed elevations again, and the floor plans associated with that. And again, the building at Plot 2 and the associated floor plans. Trimmers Field would be retained as part of the proposal, and permission is sought for remediation works to this dwelling following the removal of the existing outbuildings. Internal works are also proposed, and modest external changes relating to the fenestration are also required. The proposal also seeks permission for a single detached garage to serve Trimmers Field. I'm going to move on to some site photographs now. This is looking at the existing access to the site. And this building is showing this picture is showing the outbuildings to be demolished as part of this application. We've got the garage here, this extension here, and this bit to the rear as well. This is looking towards the east of the site and further outbuildings to be demolished. This here, and this one here. This would be the siting for the proposed building at Plot 1. This is looking towards the southeast corner of the site. This would be the rear curtilage for Plot 1, and this is the boundary treatment shared with Fieldgate and 32 Hillgarth. This is the Plot 2 siting looking to the west of the site. This area would form the curtilage of the rear curtilage of Plot 2. And this is looking to the northwest of the site and the boundary behind which is the access to Fieldgate. So looking to the left of the slide, the matters of principal and technical judgment are the principle of the development, having regard to the location of the site within the developed area of Hindhead, the planning history of the site, considering the extant planning permission, highways access and parking, noting that the housing supply, highways access and parking, noting that the County Highway Authority have undertaken an assessment of the site in relation to traffic generation, the suitability of the existing access and the parking provision, and have raised no objection to the safety and operation of the highway subject to relevant conditions. The effect on the integrity of the SPA, noting that although the proposal would result in an increase of people permanently residing on the site within the 1 kilometre buffer zone of the Wilden Heaths, there are alternative recreational opportunities available within the area that would divert residents from using the SPA, and therefore is not likely to have a significant effect upon the integrity of the SPAs. Biodiversity, having regard to the technical opinion of the Council's ecologist, who are satisfied that the proposal would not cause harm to protected species subject to conditions. And finally, archaeology, noting that the county archaeologist has raised no objection to the proposal. Moving to the right of the slide, members are being asked to exercise their judgment on impact on visual amenity, considering the scale, siting and form of the proposed dwellings and the spacing retained between the built forms and how that reflects to the character of the area. Residential amenity, noticing the distances between the proposed buildings and the existing neighbouring properties and the conditions recommended by officers to protect neighbouring amenity, and impact on trees, having regard to the Tree and Landscape Officer's technical opinion that the proposal would not cause harm to or loss of trees that would otherwise contribute to the visual amenity of the area. There is no update to this application, and Officer's recommendation remains as set out on page 34 of the agenda, that permission be granted, subject to conditions 1 to 11, set out on pages 34 to 39 of the agenda, and informatives 1 to 11, set out in the agenda. Furthermore, just to advise members generally, the officer's report contains a section under development plan policies and proposals which outlines the schedule for the publication of the local plan. The current reports state April 2016. There has today been a new local plan timetable published which states that the publication for the local plan is now July this year, and that relates to all these officers' reports tonight. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Gemma. Members, open to you. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a few points to make. Firstly, how wide is this drive at its narrowest point?
Okay. The driveway at its narrowest point is 3.8 metres, 3.3 metres, and that's for approximately 32 metres. The remainder of the driveway is 4.8 metres, with passing places being proposed. Thank you.
That is a bit narrower than Surrey highways would normally require, isn't it? 4.1 metres is what I understand is the requirement that they ask for. So that's a point to be considered. Secondly, looking at this diagram, it's not clear how much parking is provided for the 5-bedroom house on Plot 1. It seems to me that that is rather a small space for perhaps 3 or 4 cars plus visitors.
just make one comment while Gemma's looking for the answer. The driveway currently serves 2 properties on that road.
It will be serving 5, I understand.
Correct, sir?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just looking at page 28 of the agenda. It does set out that the council's parking guidelines for the proposals would be 2.5 vehicles spaces per plot, so the 5 spaces being proposed would be accordance with the guidance.
So it's 5 spaces in front of that house, is it? Yeah.
It's 5 spaces for the 2 developments, yes.
Another point I'd like to make on this particular application, there seems to have been over time a number of applications which have been allowed and or granted and not taken up. One of the biggest problems we have in Waverley at the moment is the fact that we have a large number of extant planning permissions, and we are being pressed to make sure that they are built. I would like to see a condition added to this saying that should it be granted, these houses must be built or started within 1 year and completed within 2.
Turn to Barry Devlin.
Mr. Chairman, I've been able to consult very quickly a circular on the use of conditions in planning permissions, circular 1195, which is still regarded as extant guidance and cogent guidance. It's been cited in recent cases, and although the National Planning Policy Framework seeks to delete it, the courts still hold it to be good guidance. And conditions stated which are not acceptable in Appendix B under paragraph 1 is to require that development should be completed within the time limit. This in turn refers one to paragraph 61 of the guidance, which points out if there is a reason to fail to complete a development, and that reason is a financial difficulty experienced by a developer, neither a completion notice nor the enforcement of conditions would be likely to succeed. In such circumstances, it may be that the only practical step open to the local planning authority that wish to secure the completion of development is the acquisition of the land. And it goes on in this vein. The basic rubric tests, so a condition has to be necessary, relevant to planning, relevant to the development to be permitted, enforceable, precise and reasonable in all other respects. Elsewhere in the guidance it's stated that if there is deviation from standard time limits, there must be clear explanatory reasons for that. So in view of this circular guidance, which is accorded great weight by the courts at the current time, Mr. Chairman, I would advise strongly against the imposition of such a condition.
Thank you for that. I would be delighted if we could send that to the DCLG, yes, who are pressing us and threatening us with penalties, yes, if we don't complete the number of houses that we are being asked to build.
Councillor King.
Thank you, Chairman. I do have some concerns, I have to say, about this proposal. It is an area of properties sitting within large gardens, and here we're, I think, shoehorning in 2 more 5-bedroom properties which are large with relatively small gardens. I think they're perhaps not quite in keeping with the local area. Thank you.
Councillor Round.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to echo that comment I was thinking of making myself, because on the one hand, one might think it's a shame that the admittedly handsome building that's theirs at the moment is going to be compromised. It might be more appropriate to have 2 houses there rather than 3. I consider it to be rather squashed.
Thank you. Gemma?
I think in relation to the first question in terms of the character of the area, I think if we move back to the location plan, members will note that there are residential developments within the area that do have smaller character areas. And in this context, officers considered the proposal would not be incongruous and in keeping. With regards to the query about 2 properties on the site, again, officers believe that the character of the surrounding area can lend itself to having 3 properties in that area, as well as what's been previously approved on the site. Again, wouldn't appear incongruous in the surrounding area. I mean, if all the surrounding development uniformly had the larger gardens, there could have been more of an argument towards that. But in this particular context of surrounding development, officers are quite happy that is representing the same sort of pattern. Thank you, Chair.
As one of the local members, if you look at Trimmers Wood, William Place, Hillgarth, they're all very similar densities to what is proposed here by the developer, Mr. Elsmore. Just a thought.
Yes, it occurred to me they're similar if you had 2 in the area marked in red, and then I would imagine that the 4 properties to the left of that, to the left of the blue square, sizable gardens, they'll want to develop as well. The problem is, in the end, we destroy the character of the area. I admit it's a bit mixed at the moment. 2 will be fine, 3 I have my doubts, that's all.
We're down from the original application, which was 5, if you remember. Right, if there are no further questions, Gemma, officers, do you wish to make any further comment?
No, thank you, Chairman.
Right, in that case, we'll move to the recommendation, which is subject to conditions 1 to 16 and informatives 1 to 11 as set out in the report on pages 34 to 41. Permission be granted. Those in favour, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Those against?
1.
Abstentions? No. Thank you. Permission is granted. Thank you very much. Item 6.3, WA 2015-1805, erection of a single-storey ancillary office building to the rear following demolition of the existing outbuilding at 72 High Street, Haslemere. Councillor King?
Sorry to step in, but I thought it might be as well to do this at this stage. Chairman, having read the papers in great detail on this one, I don't believe I can make a decision on this without a site visit. So I would like to propose a site visit, and I believe I also have a seconder.
Please to second, Mr. Chairman.
Ditto.
I was actually going to suggest that you hold that request until we've heard the officer's report, and then we will move to that recommendation of yours for a site visit. So, carry on, Louise.
Thank you, Chairman. The site is located on the eastern side of Haslemere High Street. The site is currently occupied by a 2-storey building which is in use as an estate agent's. There is a large amenity area to the rear of the property. The site is located within Haslemere Town Centre, and the surrounding area is mixed in character. To the immediate north is a residential property with associated amenity space, and to the immediate south is another residential property with associated amenity space. Properties fronting Haslemere High Street are predominantly commercial in character, with some residential above. This photo shows the main building on the site, taken from the large amenity area. The existing building on the site is Grade 2 listed. This second photo at the bottom of the screen is taken from within the garden, looking south towards Garden Cottage, which is just seen here. As you can see on the boundary, there's a high brick wall and some trees also on the boundary. This photo is taken towards the property at number 74 High Street, which is to the north of the site on the boundary. And this second photo is taken from within the garden, looking towards a rear outbuilding which is within the curtilage, which is proposed to be removed as part of the application. The building would be positioned here, in the centre of the site, 10 metres from the boundary with 74 High Street, and 8 metres from the boundary at the south with Garden Cottage. It would be situated within 15 metres of the rear wall of the listed building. This slide shows the proposed elevations of the outbuilding. And this slide shows the floor plan. The outbuilding is proposed to be used as office accommodation, which will be in association with the existing A2 unit fronting the High Street. In conclusion, officers consider that the additional A2 office accommodation would be acceptable within the town centre location. Officers also consider that the proposal would be located in acceptable separation distances from adjoining residential properties, and the proposal would not harm the setting of the listed buildings. The matters of principal and technical opinion are the principle of the development, town centre issues, highways and archaeology. The matters for members' judgment this evening are the impact on visual amenity, the character of the conservation area and the setting of the listed building, the impact on residential amenity and biodiversity. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. And now we have Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Hall, requesting a site visit. Members, anyone wish to speak to that?
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something before we make my hand up. I mean, in the report it says that the Town Council has no objection and the listed buildings man is quite content with this. Is that all still as it exists in the report? So there are no issues with the Town Council or the listed buildings man?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. Councillor King?
Yeah, my concerns on this one, I find it very difficult to judge from the report and from the rather small and dark photographs at the moment, the impact this will have on the A, on the listed building, and B, on the environmental impact on the area and on the neighbour. And I think it was hard to judge. You can't tell from the high street. I've been and looked, and you've got no way you can form any judgment.
Thank you, Councillor King. Anyone else wish to comment before we put the recommendation to a vote? In which case, Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Hall, has recommended that we have a site visit prior to the next meeting of the Southern. Can I have those in favour of the site visit, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Those against?
1.
Abstentions? 2. Granted. We will take the site visit on a date. Have we got 10th of May, 10 o'clock, if that is agreed. And any Western site visit will take place after that. Thank you. Moving on to item yeah, I trust we all attend that meeting. We've been a bit scarce, the chairman and deputy chairman and the officers making up the site visit team. B3 then, erection of 7 flats, 3 townhouses, associated parking, alterations to access following demolition of a retail unit, land at Golden Hind, 35 London Road, Hindhead. Rachel, to introduce, please.
Thank you, Chairman. You will see the location plan on screen with the application site outlined for you in red. You will see it's located to the north side of London Road. Immediately to the left, as you see it on screen, is a residential dwelling number 31. And you may recall a fairly recent Hunters Place development that has been completed on the same side. On the right, as you view the screen, you'll see the Baron's garage, and that also spreads to the rear as well. Here we've got an aerial view of the application site. You'll see the site indicated by the black arrow for you on screen. You'll see there's an existing 1.5-storey building on site, and the rear garden is used as a showroom for that building. I'll take you now through some of the existing site photographs. Here you will see the front and rear of the existing building, the showroom building here, and you'll see the garden display area as well. Some existing site photographs now of the street scene. On the left-hand side, you'll see number 31 London Road and the Hunters Place development just beyond. On top right, you'll again see a further view of the application building from taken further back. And on the bottom, that's a further view of the Hunters Place development. On this photograph, you can start to get some appreciation of the proximity to 33 Hunters Place. That's the nearest of the new dwellings that forms part of that development. And you can also see the back of the existing building, which forms part of the application site. These photographs show you 31 London Road, which is one of the two closest properties to the application site. On the top you'll see the rear. This is a boundary fence which currently separates them from the application site. And you'll see the front of that building and also the side elevation that would face onto the application site. These views are taken from within number 31 London Road. Specifically on the left-hand side, that's taken from an upper floor bedroom looking to the rear. You'll see the Hunters Place on the left-hand side, and this is where the rear terrace of housing would be going. Same view taken from in the garden of that property on your right-hand side. If I can take you now through the proposed site layout and ground floor plan for the proposal. To the front of the site, you'll see the proposed block of flats, which includes a covered parking area, and two of those flats are at the ground floor level. The parking for the site would be, as stated, in the form of undercroft parking and also the parking spaces to the rear. On the rear portion of the site is a terrace of 3 dwellings, which you'll see here. They each have their own private garden located to the rear. These 2 dwellings both have an integral garage in them. And again, house 3, which you'll see just here, also has an attached garage. So this section here would be single-storey. This shows you in more close-up detail the proposed boundary alterations which are included in the proposal, and that's on the boundary between the application site and number 31. A new 2-metre-high brick wall will be extended further forwards, and further towards the front of the site you'll see a 1-metre-high brick wall. And also behind that you'll see additional landscaping to provide more of a buffer between the application site and that dwelling. I'll take you now to the existing and proposed street scenes. What you see at the top is the proposed street scene. You can see the rear terrace block showing partially behind the front block of flats. And you can see the existing street scene below. These are the proposed ground floor plans for dwellings 1 to 3. These are the dwellings that we positioned on the rear part of the site. And here we have the first, second and roof plans for those same dwellings. And turning now to the proposed block of flats, these are the proposed floor plans. You'll see that there are 2 flats proposed actually at the ground floor, flats A and B, both of those being 1-bedroom flats. Turning to the first and second floor proposed flats. You'll see flats D, C, E and F. Beg your pardon, that was just showing you the first floor, as I'm sure you noted. And on screen is the second floor plan from the flats, and that's flat G, which is contained within the roof space. These are the proposed elevations for the terraced housing at the rear of the site. You'll see there's 3 dwellings. Important to note is adjacent to number 33, which is one of the adjacent buildings, you'll see that it is a single-storey garage form providing separation between the 2 buildings. On the bottom of the screen you'll see the rear elevations and also the 2 side elevations. On screen now are the proposed elevations for the block of flats. These are the ones to be sited at the front of the application site. This is the proposed, what you'd see from the street scene, fronting directly onto London Road. You'll see there are balconies proposed at the first floor level, providing a small amount of amenity space there. And turning to the rear, you'll see there are accommodation in the roof space and the windows there. This elevation here is a side elevation, and this is the one that would actually face directly 31 Hunters Place. That's a side elevation. You'll note in particular that the windows at first floor level are high level, and there is a condition recommended that those are obviously maintained at high level and obscurely glazed to avoid any adverse overlooking or privacy issues in that respect. Before I take you through the determining issues now, if I could turn your attention to the update sheet. You'll note included in your update sheet is I have provided a comparison of the internal floor space figures for the dwellings and a comparison against the technical space standards which we have compared them against. In addition, there's also a subsequent table which includes a breakdown of the individual room sizes for each of those dwellings. The technical requirements state that single bedrooms should be a minimum of 7.5 square metres and double bedrooms a minimum of 11 square metres. In houses 1 and 2, that's the terrace at the rear of the site, bedrooms 2 and 3 measure 10 square metres, so 1 square metre below that 11 square metres. However, it is material that the overall dwelling sizes do meet the minimum standards, and the council do not have an up-to-date local plan policy to formally require compliance with that guidance. As such, it is considered that the floor space is acceptable and that overall the units do provide a good standard of accommodation. Since the publication of the agenda, the applicant has now completed an appropriate legal agreement in respect of the Wealden Heaths SPA buffer zone, and that secures the contribution in accordance with the Hindhead avoidance strategy. Officers are therefore satisfied that that's sufficient to mitigate the effect on the SPA, and that's therefore reflected in the updated recommendation you will see. If I can now take you through the determining issues which you'll see on screen. The matters of principle and technical opinion are the principle of development, highway safety and parking, the housing land supply, the effect on the Wealden Heaths SPA buffer zone, and the mix of housing. The matters of judgment are the design, layout and impact on visual amenity, the impact on residential amenity, the loss of the existing retail use, the impact on the adjacent A and B, and the amenity space and standard of accommodation for future occupants. Officers have concluded that the proposal would add vibrancy and interest to the street scene and is considered to be of an appropriate scale, form and design. The proposal would make a material boost to the housing land supply in the borough within a sustainable location in a developed area. No objection is raised in respect of the loss of the existing retail use, and that is in the absence of a specific local plan policy or any policy to protect that use. The proposal would provide sufficient parking and would not result in any adverse implication in terms of highway safety. Similarly, the proposal would not result in any materially adverse impacts on the amenity of neighbouring occupiers. In respect to neighbouring occupiers, I'd also draw members' attention to the analysis contained on page 75 of the agenda report. You'll see that provides detailed distances for you with the neighbouring dwellings. An appropriate legal agreement has now been submitted, such to mitigate the effect on the SPA. The revised recommendation is therefore as set out on your update sheet, and that is that permission be granted, subject to conditions 1 to 25 on pages 86 to 96 of the agenda report, and informatives 1 to 6 on pages 96 and 97 of the agenda report. Recommendation B is no longer applicable following the completion of the legal agreement and is now deleted. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Just make a point that a letter we all had from Cogito Consulting Limited, signed by one Steve Thwaites, where it talks about one of the local councillors attending the pre-app meeting. That was me. I did talk about the traffic we have on the London Road, or the problems with parking, on-street parking in particular, and also talked about the retail store or convenience store. Within 250 metres we have the Royal Parade and convenience store, petrol station and post office. 400 metres away we have M&S on the BP site. We have about 800 metres away Sainsbury's supermarket, which is open 7 till 11 daily. We also have immediately opposite that the Co-op. So I felt that a convenience store on the London Road where you couldn't park was out of order, and they took that on board. We're also aiming, the local councillors, to have double yellow lines all the way down that road to Hunter's Place. And if you notice at Hunter's Place, one of the things they did was put gates on the estate to deter people parking on their own, on driveways, because the National Trust charge £4 a pop for parking, and people think they can park on other people's driveways, gardens, pavements, anything. And all that was taken on board. But what Rachel didn't explain was at the back of the site, right adjacent, if you could just show it, there was going to be, was it a 3-storey building right at the back, or 2-storey anyway? It got nothing to do with me removing that. It was all down to the officers and Rachel in particular. And that side elevation there is a 1-storey bit at the side of the house adjacent to Hunter's Place. But I just thought that those comments would be worth bearing in mind. I was the person involved with the pre-app as well. Members, Councillor King.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll pick up on a point you raised. On the layout plan, the site layout, it's very unclear. I can't read it on my plan and I can't read it on there. What treatment is proposed at the entrance, bearing in mind the problems that we had at Hunter's Place, in which I had some involvement, and the developers had to gate it? Is this one proposed to be gated or not, please?
Rachel, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for that question. There's no gating proposed. You'll see there's a slight change in surface material just here to sort of slow down vehicles as they enter the site, but no, there's no gates proposed. Thank you.
Yep, please do.
Sorry, thank you very much for me coming back. I know when we did Hunter's Place, it wasn't originally gated, and they had to come back because the general public, being the general public, and the way they behaved with parking, just completely abused the site and parked everywhere. So they had to go back and put gates. If they wanted to gate this, did they need to come back and ask for planning permission, or can they just do it if it becomes necessary?
Hunter's Place certainly had a separate planning application for the gates. Peter?
So, Chairman, I think you've answered the question for us. So, yes, planning permission would be required. Yes, thank you. That's no problem. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Round.
Thank you, Chairman. I didn't realise this was in the offing. I know this place. It is, I think, one of the gems of the area. It's a run-down building with an antique shop and architectural ornaments at the back. It's one of these fascinating places you love tripping over and spending hours in. This is probably not germane to the application, but may I ask, as a matter of interest, does the gentleman who owns this place intend continuing his business elsewhere, or will he just close it down? It's not material? Thank you. Okay, let me go on, if I may. We, all of us, had a wonderful opportunity when the tunnel was opened to revisit Hindhead and make it pretty. It's a bit of a mess at the moment. I don't live there. I hope residents who do wouldn't mind my saying so. I think it is a shame if we just keep on building small houses everywhere. I hear it's being said that it's complementary to the street scene and so forth. Well, I actually disagree. I don't want to sound as if one should have a Stalinist approach to planning and dictate what is built where. It's a pity that the free market doesn't throw up more interesting proposals to use this space. I wonder what will happen to Barron's Garage. That'll probably go for lots of small houses and maybe the Punch Bowl Hotel. I sound like a bit of a doom and gloom merchant, I apologise for that, but I do think the character of the area would not be improved by this particular application. And I really want to ask, does anyone have a plan for what we do with Hindhead?
Rachel?
There is the Hindhead concept statement, which we have made an assessment of the proposal against. So that gears towards a more comprehensive regeneration, which obviously some limit in what we can apply that to individual sites when they come forward, but yes. Thank you, Chairman.
Just going to add that Natural England, when they were talking with Hindhead together, said that should Barons subsequently move, they would not wish to see dense housing in that area. They would not wish to see 3-storey buildings there, because if you remember, it goes up from 3 4-storey buildings at the Magic Roundabouts and climbs up to the Punch Bowl Hotel. I think Natural England were fairly clear on that. And that's probably 6-7 years ago, so one hopes that they would stick by their declared intentions on that, and I think the National Trust would also have some very strong feelings, but we don't know about Barons, do we? Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very supportive of having smaller dwellings. That there is a definite need in the Haslemere Hindhead area for smaller dwellings. And I'm assuming that these are all at market price. There's no, it doesn't have a requirement for the number on the site, proposed number, to actually have any affordable homes. Is that correct?
Rachel?
That's correct, yes. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Piper, do you... No? Nope? Nothing else? Councillor Adams.
I'm just searching through the application. I'm not quite sure where all the bins...
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for that question. The proposed bin stores for the flats, which I presume is where the particular interest is located here. So that's in the Undercroft sort of parking area at the bottom of that block of flats. And you'll see the refuse vehicle marked on in terms of how it would access the site and pick up those. And the individual bins for the actual houses would be stored in their rear gardens. Thank you.
Councillor Adams.
Sorry, so the actual operation then, people will have to take the bins through the car park to the front site, will they? And the people who have the houses at the back will all have to take their bins out to the road. Is that how it'll work?
Yeah, I'll turn now to the responsible waste and recycling officer who's commented on how it would work in practice. And what they've said, that's on page 70 of the agenda if you do want to refer to it. And they show for the refuse collection vehicle to actually reverse in and collect from both the houses and the communal waste area for the flats. So they would pick them up from here to put them in the actual refuse vehicle and then collect the refuse for the flats actually from this undercroft parking area. I hope that answers and helps. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just wonder, is there any way we can put a recommendation in to the developer to put gates in, as in Hunter's Place, to deter parking? Because at the moment they have got a parking standard higher than we normally require. I would hate to think that it's used by visitors to Hindhead.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think we understand, or completely understand the point that's been made. I mean, the application's been presented on the basis that the parking provisions provided for those properties. It's also going to be, I mean, it wouldn't be an adopted road as such. The county council wouldn't adopt it, and it would be a private road. So it would be for residents to enforce. We haven't got gates proposed. It's not part of the consideration. County Council are happy on the basis that they're not being provided. Appreciate there might be some conflict with members of the public going into there, but I don't think we can insist in this instance for gates to be provided. Thank you, Chairman.
I'm sure the agent is watching this webcast. I hope he takes that on board. Elizabeth.
Chairman, if I could just add one slight consideration, that in fact gated developments have always been seen as perhaps not particularly desirable in the sense that they create exclusive domain, and good urban design principles suggest there should be more open connectivity between developments and the communities that they're seeking to relate to. So as a principle, going forward, we generally would not encourage gated developments. I can see the practical desirability of them to deter people coming in and out of the development, but as a principle, generally speaking, we wouldn't encourage gated developments from a design point of view. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Rachel.
Just one added thought, thank you, Chairman. In respect to seeking to gain some further control over the parking, you might think it useful to put on a condition requiring a parking management plan, so you could then look at the allocation of the spaces, which might actually deter some of the visitors who are not visiting the development to use that space for parking. Thank you.
Thank you. I like that idea. Let's. Yes. Members, are you happy to take that extra condition on board? Agreed. Thank you very much. Let's move to the recommendations on the revised recommendations on the update sheet, plus the one we've just talked about, parking. Permission be granted, subject conditions 1 to 25 on pages 86 to 96, and informatives 1 to 6 on pages 96 and 97 of the agenda report. Those in favour, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Those against?
1.
Abstentions?
1.
None. Okay, permission is granted. No reason to exclude the press and public. That is the end of the meeting. Thank you all very much indeed.